Hi, how are you doing? Good to see you here. We're gonna start today's live stream by giving you a short introduction of what has taken place, and then we're gonna address 4 points that I want to discuss in today's video. Let me know in the comments if this sounds good, if everything is coming out okay. Should be all right from my side, I hope. All right, so we are going to talk about the fact that the US has bombed 3 nuclear sites in Iran. And this is, matter of factly, an illegal attack that goes against the UN Charter. And, well, it's considered an act of war. Um, some people consider it an act of war, some people might not. But to the eyes of any international viewer, this is considered an act of war. Now, the consequences of this attack are many, and I think that it will affect you as a regular American if you are American watching this. So, what I want to do today is to discuss what are the different things that we know as they're coming out hot off the news, and more importantly, what may happen next. This is what I think a lot of people are really stressing about because we don't know what is going to happen. So, very briefly, and we're going to develop these ideas, I want to tell you what I want to talk about today. So let me just bring this out here. The first aspect is damage assessment. It seems like there was not too much damage to the to the Fordo, to the Natanz, and the Isfahan nuclear sites. There have been pictures released, and they show impact but not significant damage. But we're going to expand on that and where actually the enriched material is because they don't seem to know where that went. The second thing that I want to talk about is, well, about the international law and the UN, because the fact that these B 2 bombers flew out from Kansas City, Missouri for 30 plus hours nonstop, um, and they actually flew in areas where no nation allowed them to use their airspace except for India, a part of India where they actually crossed, according to the maps that I've seen. That's going to be very important because there are repercussions to international law and to the United Nations uh, because this hasn't been sanctioned. This is against the United Nations. And what does that mean for countries around the world? The other aspect that I want to address is in terms of politically, what does this mean for Trump? Yeah, it was done without congressional approval, and the question now is this considered an act of war? Um, we're going to talk about what has been said here and there, but the question that I'll try to answer is whether there will be consequences for Trump in his country. What is going to happen? What is happening with MAGA and the possibility of a an impeachment for Trump. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about, and this is again what most people are worried about, is what retaliation will look like. Mainly, what is going to happen at the Strait of Hormuz and how it's going to affect not only China but the rest of the world when it comes to oil. So those are the 4 topics that I want to address. I want to start first with let me put on the comments. Hi Bella, how are you? Thanks for joining. Okay, let us get started then with this main point about the US having bombed these 3 Iranian nuclear sites. It was Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan. This is clearly a violation of the UN Charter and is considered internationally as an illegal act of war. Um, the most important thing about this attack is that there's no apparent radiation coming out from this site. So that's a good thing. The photos that have been shown show that the tunnels were collapse. The access tunnels were collapsed, and you can see three impacts in one area and three impacts on the other in the Fordo site, basically. Um, there is a lot of questions out there because since there is no radiation, we can assume that the enriched material is still safe. Um, there's obviously some damage to the facilities, but yeah, they can continue enriching their material and they can continue um, with more impetus now than ever their desire to come up with a nuclear weapon. Um, So these bombs that, according to the Pentagon, were deep penetration type, basically they dig into the soil to damage at depth, but apparently there was not much done. A lot of people, including Republican Senator Matt Gaetz, was talking about, oh, how can Top Gun have anticipated what was going to take place? And then we've all seen the scenes of Tom Cruise, now Maverick, going in and shooting in this valley and whatnot. The interesting thing is that the explosion that we see there is absolutely nothing related to what actually we see in this post attack photos. Um, and obviously, they were using completely different flights. So people trying to make that comparison is a little bit silly. But what is 100% sure and certain is that this attack is going to push Iran to actively pursue nuclear weapons. Um, you look at North Korea, you look at any country that has nuclear weapons, that's the meme that we see on the internet, right? Like, oh, um, they might have nuclear weapons, so we need to attack them. Oh, but the Russians have nuclear weapons too. Why don't you attack them? Oh, because they have nuclear weapons. That joke is no longer a joke. This is now, I think that it's important to understand that having nuclear weapons is not particularly difficult. It's not necessarily all that complicated. Think about a country like North Korea with all the sanctions and all the economic difficulties, etc., etc. They have it and they are pretty much untouchable. So even though uh, Netanyahu has been saying since 1995 that they're just weeks away, months away from producing nuclear weapons and from having nuclear weapons, that probably could have been true. But what we are seeing is that there was political decision made not to have them, not to build them. If they wanted, they could have had them long time ago, just like North Korea has had them. Um, but now they've been attacked. There is a sense of nationalism that is rising in the country, and there is no reason for them not to have them. They have seen what it's like not to have them, and I think that that's what they're going to see. We're going to see. The other thing that we're seeing that is quite concerning is other countries are actually coming out and saying, "Look, we're ready to give you nuclear bombs, and we're ready to give you whatever you need to defend yourself." Um, North Korea has come out and said that. Russia has come out and said that. So it's interesting to see that what America and Israel wanted to do, which was to stop them from having, might actually have the completely opposite reaction and is accelerate them having nuclear weapons. And there's another aspect that comes along with this is every country around the world is seeing what has happened. So other smaller countries might also consider, hey, maybe I should also have nuclear weapons because if I don't get them, I'm talking about certain countries in Africa who came out on social media posting things saying like we we are going to have to defend ourselves as well. So by doing this, nuclear proliferation is actually going to increase the exact opposite of what they wanted to do. So it's so short-sighted. But anyway, there's something else that I think is going to take place because a lot of people are out there asking, oh, we needed to change this regime. We needed to And people ask themselves, why is America so hated? Why were the Iranians chanting death to America? I saw the video from one of the leaders of Iran explaining what they mean by death to America is death to Americans' foreign policy. You can check out that video on Twitter or on YouTube. He's actually explaining that they want to stop this foreign policy of interfering in other countries and sanctioning and doing all these horrible things around the world. Um, and it's interesting when you look at what JD Vance was saying in his video just recently, saying like, "Oh, we're not at war with Iran. What we are is at war with Iran's nuclear plan." In that sense, you could say so many silly things. You could say that, well, 9/11 was a war against the Twin Towers, not America. I mean, the stupidity of that comment is, anyway, it's just more idiocy from American leaders. But what I do see is it's going to be a lot more difficult for Americans to travel around the world. I posted something on Twitter saying from now on, Americans need to sleep with one eye open, because you don't know what is going to take place. There will be retaliation. There will be an action against the United States because it is directly and 100% the United States responsible for what took place. So, yeah, they're going to have to sleep with one eye open. And if white people are traveling around the world, probably they'll need to bring back those flags. That's another post that I made on Twitter where they just show a white flag that said, "I'm not American," because the US, the anti US sentiment just keeps growing and is expanding around the world. Okay. The second thing that I want to talk about is the what we talked about here. Let me put it here. The breaches of international law and the UN Charter. This operation that was conducted with those B 2 bombers flew 30 hours plus. Um, they did not cross any country's airspace except from India's, from the maps that I have seen. The fact that they're returning without any incident is being celebrated all over media in the United States. But what this attack underscores, is that America is willing and able to bypass international law and act unilaterally against any country that they want to uh, affect. What did they want to do here? Well, they wanted to destroy the nuclear capacity of Iran. That failed. They also were looking for total surrender. That failed. They're talking about regime change. That failed. It is not likely to happen. So this only accomplishes one thing: is the elevation of the risk of retaliation. Obviously, Iran has to do something. And one of the things that they've said that they are going to do is that they're going to target U.S. Navy ships or bases in the region. Now, many people analyze this and say this is not what should be done, but that's part of the retaliation part, which is part number 4. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But in terms of America just breaching international rules, international law, and the UN Charter, many countries are paying attention. China, in particular, is paying attention. Excuse me. We all know and we've all seen that there are 3 enemies that America has: it's Russia, Iran, and China. So after seeing what has taken place in Iran, every country must be alarmed and alert, knowing that international laws simply do not constrain the United States. And I think that the leaders in China are aware of this, and they will be prepared to act accordingly, knowing that it simply cannot be trusted. It simply cannot be believed, whatever they say. And a lot of people are quoting these negotiations that America was having with Iranians, and how, with one hand, They were saying, oh, we need to come to some agreement, we need to negotiate. And with the other hand, you're planning how to attack them and destroy them. This level of distrust is going to affect the United States enormously moving forward. There will be zero negotiation going forward. Um, and again, you can see that also affecting other areas. For example, South Korea and Japan were invited to a NATO meeting at The Hague. They just said, no, we're not going. At the same time, Japan also withdrew from a tariff negotiation that they were having a few days ago. So you're starting to see the world understanding that no matter who is in charge, what America does with one hand when they show you an olive branch, they're preparing to backstab you. You've seen it when they meet, for example, the Chinese officials. What happened in Alaska, right? um, Wang Yi comes and sits down at the table to negotiate with Blinken. This is a few years ago, right, with the previous administration. And just before they land, they have sanctions on Chinese entities. It's like every time they extend the hand, there's something that they're cooking and they're preparing. How can you ever trust America again? So that's one of the biggest damages to America's reputation that they've created with this particular attack. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is, well, what is going to take place in the United States? So, talking about the political price that Trump may have to face. As we said at the beginning of the video, this attack was done without congressional approval. The question is, if it's an act of war, it requires congressional approval. So this is what they're going out there, like I was talking about JD Vance saying, like, oh no, we're not at war. Um, well, that is for the recipient of the attack to determine, and for international law to determine as well. Um, you are in the middle of negotiations. You are sitting at the table talking about how to sort this out, and you go out and you just bomb their nuclear program. Um, it's it's an act of war. It's against UN Charter. Is not necessary to do, and they chose to do it. Now, why they chose to do it, we could go at length here talking about why Elon Musk tweeted that time to drop the big bomb and talking about Trump being in the Epstein files and why the Epstein files have not been released. And what does Israel have on the leadership of the United States that can be manipulated into joining them and doing their fighting for Israel? It's incredible when you see left and right the support there is in America for Israel. It is unreal. It is extraordinary. If you don't see how Israel really controls the American government, is because you don't want to see it. You saw that interview with Tucker and Ted Cruz, where, yeah, I went to the Senate initially to defend the right of Israel to be a nation. I'm like, you were elected by Texans, but your principal objective was to go out and defend Israel. And this sits perfectly well with those people who go out there and elect. I just saw a tweet from Kristen Iverson. She's fantastic commentator as well here on YouTube. But she tweeted something like, "That's it, I'm done. Next time I'm going to vote Democrat." I'm like, if you think that this can be resolved by voting, if you still think that voting changes anything, if you really think that your vote means absolutely anything in the way things are done in the United States, I don't know what to tell you. I got a bridge to sell you, really. This is not a Democrat or a Republican thing. It's just the powers that be that control the members of government. So why America did it It's not the point. However, there's some out there talking about impeaching Trump because of this action. Um, I don't think this is going to take place. Why? Um, because, as I said, um, the U.S. administration alleged that Iran was developing nukes, but this has been contested. Only 3 months ago was Tulsi Gabbard doing answering questions in the Senate, saying that according to the U.S. reports, they were not doing that. Iran was not getting ready to produce weapons, nuclear weapons, only 3 months ago. But of course, she went out yesterday and said, like, oh, you guys have misinterpreted what I said. No, no, you said it and it's clear. But now you need to play cover. You need to play cover and say, like, yes, they were just few days, a few weeks, a few months from actually developing nuclear weapons. It's Colin Powell once again. It's really disheartening to see people that you thought or saw had a certain level of integrity as a service member that she was, and just bending over, flip flopping, and go doing a 180 on her own words that you can go and watch on TV. This is, well, very, very disappointed, number one, and very concerning, because you understand that it doesn't matter what they say or do, is what the powers that be want to do. And what I mean by powers that be is the Zionists, is the Israeli forces that control the United States. Now, the other thing that relates to this idea of impeaching Trump for this is because unless the United States declares a war, yeah, this is not something that can be impeached. It's not an impeachable offense if they paint it as this was not an act of war. And we already saw so many people saying, like, no, this is not an act of war. This is not an act of war. For Iran, it is. But the Americans are trying to twist the narrative and tell all their citizens that this is not an act of war, when you and I can all see that this was so. Now, the other reason why I don't think he's going to be impeached is that if you push for impeachment, sorry, you're going to be painted as a strong um, anti-Semite, as somebody who is against Israel. And we all know that the pro-Israel lobbying in the U.S., mainly APAC, is extremely, extremely strong. So I don't think that there's going to be any politician putting himself or herself out there to really push for impeaching Trump because of this action. That is going to be just swept under the rug and move on to the next thing. Um, Another point that I wanted to make is that they're trying to paint it just as a special military operation, and I find that very interesting, because you are criticizing and judging Russia for having done a special military operation in Ukraine, but now you're framing this attack on Iran as just a military operation. This is not a war; it's just a military operation. That's a bit hypocritical, but we probably quite used to that already to the U.S. being extremely hypocritical. Um, Now, I also think that the main objective that Trump had, whether he was accepting it or not, although a few of his tweets or his posts have actually revealed that, is that he wanted to completely surrender Iran. He wanted a regime change. Now, that, as I said earlier, is not likely to happen. Instead, what this attack has done is that it has fostered greater Iranian national unity. There is a sense of nationalism that is visible. As a nation, they're being attacked, they are being denied the possibility to have a nuclear program. And that's just on top of every other sanction and every other difficulty that is thrown their way as a nation. So this attack is actually having the opposite. We, I don't think we will see a change of regime in Iran, at least not in the near future. The actions that Iran takes in the near future may lead to that, but it's not cause consequence. It's not that the attacks are going to cause that. It might be whatever Iran decides to do might lead to some issues with the governance of the country, and that's part number four of what I wanted to talk about, which is the aspect of retaliation. Um, I think that everyone is expecting Iran to retaliate. It is, as I just said, because of this nationalism, doing nothing would actually be counterproductive. It will probably threaten the stability of the regime in Iran. They will have to do something. They cannot sit uh, and just take this illegal attack without any sort of response. So they will have to do something. So, what are some of the options that they have? Well, one of the options is to continue attacking Israel. And by this, I mean, and this is what we've seen. We saw it last night, and today Israel also retaliated. What we're seeing basically is continues, they continue to send missiles and hit infrastructure in Israel. The important thing about this war, because it is a war between Israel and Iran, is that if this becomes a war of attrition, every war can be considered a war of attrition. The Israelis have nowhere to go. And let me explain this. You've already seen Israelis fleeing the country. They're already leaving to Cyprus. They're already leaving to Turkey, where they were, oh, can we go into Egypt? There's, they're not from the land. They're not from there. They don't have roots there. They have other places to be. They have other places to go to if things go wrong. That's a super important thing to remember. Um, that cannot be said of Iran. The Iranians, that's their land. That's where they live. If Israel continue attacking them, then they will continue attacking them. And then you start comparing the sizes and the capacity of the military. The size of Iran is, I don't know how many times the size of Israel. Israel is tiny. The military and the support that they get from other countries. Of course, the support, as I said in another video, is not going to be direct. China is not going to directly support them. But there's Pakistan. Pakistan already said, hey, if you are attacked with a nuclear weapon, we will retaliate in your name. There's Russia, who has also offered some assistance. So nobody is jumping in because everybody is on the fence watching what is going to take place. But the support that Iran has, like, it outweighs what Israel and America could do in terms of retaliation. So those two things, the size of the country, the military, and the support, is not even, is not balanced. And as I said again, Israelis are ready to go back to where they came from when things get bad. So all that Iran has to do is just keep on hitting a building. You hit a building, even though if you don't destroy it completely, but that's going to have to be evacuated. You hit an office building, people can't work there anymore. So it's just continue to hit, even if your ability to break the Iron Dome is 10%, 5%, 20%, whatever it is. We've seen in the last few days that it seems to be stretched and not being able to work properly. So all that Iran has to do is just keep on doing this, and people are going to jump ship. They will go back to where they came from. Um, so that increased pressure on Israeli society is going to cause a migration that is going to be detrimental to whatever they want to say, whatever they want to do. Sorry. Um, the problem is that with what they're doing, this may increase U.S. support. Israel will need increased U.S. support. How can they get it? And this is the dangerous part. They could stage a false flag, and that is going to then trigger U.S. involvement. And this takes us to what has been said on social media. And one of the cards that Iran has always up their sleeve, which is to block the Strait of Hormuz. Um, if they do that, we already seen that there's tons of military Navy ships moving to the region, troops moving to the region from the US, like getting ready for something, some kind of action, some kind of activity. Bella, no, we can never forget Libya. They've done this to so many countries. Iran is just the last one, the latest one. Um, so getting back to the Strait of Hormuz, and this is some facts and some numbers that I got from Warwick Powell. He shared with me earlier on WeChat. There's about one fifth of the global oil consumption that passes through the Strait of Hormuz. It goes from the Gulf into the Strait of Hormuz and then into the Indian Ocean and any other places. Now, there's at this time or any given time, there's about 100 million barrels being consumed daily. And one fifth of those pass through this strait. So that's about 20 million barrels, sorry, each day. Now, where do they go? Well, 40% of those, so that's going to be about, sorry, 75% of that goes to Asia. So that's about 15 million barrels a day are destined for Asia. And of those 15 million barrels, 40% go to China. So that's about roughly 6-7%. About, sorry, not 6-7%. About 6 million barrels a day go to China. So this is the big issue with this. Now, I was watching Liu Xing, uh, and she had an Iranian expert that was talking with her, and he was saying that they could make an exception for Chinese vessels, for Chinese ships. There's already a joke that are some ships identifying themselves as Chinese. There's a Singaporean ship identifying itself as Chinese, and this is something that sometimes vessels do. But even if they made an exception for China, right? That's only 6 million. There's a lot of countries in Asia thinking about. I was talking also to Professor Ana Malindong Oy, and she was saying that Philippines is extremely oil dependent. So if the strait is blocked and only Chinese vessels are allowed to go in and out, then a country like the Philippines would have a lot of trouble. Countries like Japan, South Korea, Malaysia, I mean, I'm talking Spanish, sorry. I mean, um, many countries will be affected by this. Um, so what we can see is if they go ahead and they block the strait, price of oil around the world is going to go up. And of course, with that, inflation. Um, it's important to understand that even if Iran did not make this exemption for Chinese vessels, um, China still is relatively better suited to handle this shortage of oil. One of the main aspects is how much of the power to move goods and people in the country comes from electric vehicles nowadays. That is one of the main aspects that China has focused in developing their EV infrastructure. Is that the the less dependent they are on oil, then the better for them in case of a situation like this. Um, so yes, if Iran decides to, and I think they've already done it, if I'm not mistaken, about 14% of the world oil consumption will be affected. That's how important that strait is. Now, the really interesting thing is how the White House is now asking China to put pressure on Iran to not blockade the strait, and I find this extremely hypocritical again, because once more we're highlighting how important China's role in the global crisis is. They are the ones out there fixing all the different issues. Um, we've heard it when they blame China for what's taking place in Ukraine. Now they make a mess in Iran and they want China to fix it. Will China do it? Well, China's best interest is that the global economy doesn't stall, doesn't stop, doesn't come to a halt. So there may be something that they could do. But the most important thing to understand is that China is not going to tell Iran what to do. They might have talks, they might have suggestions, they might have, this is what we think will be best, but you are you. And they are ready to um, deal with whatever decision Iran makes. And as I said, their EV buildup puts them in a better situation. A lot of people talk about these new railway that connects Iran to China and saying, well, maybe they could replace a lot of the oil transport to that particular railway. What we do know is that Israel has already targeted that railway. The second thing to know about that railway is the capacity is just nowhere near what China would need. Someone was, I think it was Arnaud Bertrand that was doing some calculations, something like uh, 600 barrels. I don't remember the exact number, but basically it meant like one full train of 80 cars every hour or something like that. Something that um, is not at capacity right this moment. And the other aspect is that if you get that going, yeah, great for China, but it's so easy to disrupt. Talking about false flags or talking about easy targets, you know that the United States was the one responsible behind NS2, right? What is stopping them from blowing up that railway and blocking the transportation of oil to China by rail? So it's not really a very quick or easy um, solution that is going to replace maritime routes and maritime transport of oil. So that's what gives the Hormuz Strait such importance. Um, but then again, this particular blockade is attracting a lot of vessels and a lot of U.S. Navy vessels to the area. It is one of those places that can create a big crisis around the world, financial, um, goods, all kinds of things could be affected if this is blockade. So obviously, there's a lot of ships around the area. That increases really quickly the risk of a false flag by Israel. They could, because all these ships are there like sitting ducks, waiting to see what's going to happen or waiting to see how they can protect, yeah, the cargo. But that's it. It will be very easy for Israel to attack one of these ships, one of these American Navy ships, vessels, and then blame Israel because Israel has also, sorry, because Iran has also said that they're going to attack and they're going to make America pay for it. They're targeting bases or um, vessels. So it will be very easy to make something happen and blame Iran. That then again escalates the conflict even further. And i- this, if that were to happen, and this is why this Strait of Hormuz is so important, this regional conflict becomes now a global conflict because it's disrupting the global oil supply. We said to the tunes of 14%. So those are the things that Iran might do. The one thing that everybody is saying is do not attack America directly. The recommendation of the suggestion of what Iran can do, because remember, they cannot not do anything. They cannot sit there and say, oh, we were hit. They will have to do something. And that something cannot include the United States. That's what they want. That's what Netanyahu wants. Netanyahu wants America to feel the need to come back and hit them again, probably by putting troops on the boots on the ground, escalating to a conflict that now would have global repercussions, a global scale, basically. So, friends, we're coming to about 45 minutes. If anybody has any comments or any questions, just put them in the comments here, and then we can talk about it. But I would like to share my conclusions and the broader implications. If there are any questions, anybody that wants to talk and comment or participate, let me know. Um, but this is what I think. Number one, the physical destruction of these Iranian sites simply did not happen. But the political and the diplomatic damage to America's image is severe. It's a huge blow to the diplomatic image of the United States. Nobody is going to sit at the table with them and talk to them. There's no point in negotiating. Because of this, Iran now has a greater justification and incentive to go ahead and develop nuclear weapons. And of course, this is going to have global implications for non proliferation. Other smaller countries, as we talked about, Africa, you were talking about Libya, Bella, right? There's other people out there thinking, I need to protect myself. With all the shifting of the global south to a multipolar world, this is what could take place. Um, It was Hussein Askari who was commenting on one of his videos, and in one of the chat that I saw, his view as this is 100% an attempt to derail the Belt and Road Initiative as well. And this is what I commented. This is uh, one shot, two birds, basically, because not only are you affecting Iran, but you are affecting the BRI and China's attempt at building the new Silk Road. Uh, Iran, for all its faults in being committed or more assertive in its relationship with China, they were embracing the BRI. That's the rail that they built, the ports. They also they joined the BRICS. They joined Shanghai Cooperation Organization. They were working with the Chinese, so this is just an attempt to derail those efforts. Um, that's clearly what is going to take place. Um, the other thing that I would like to conclude is definitely Trump is not going to face any major domestic consequences. Um, the only thing is that trusting the U.S. internationally, it's zero. Yeah, it has damaged any diplomatic prospects around the world, as I mentioned, seen with the walkouts by Japan and South Korea from the NATO meeting at The Hague the next few days. So all we need to do is keep an eye open for what escalation is going to take place, particularly false flags. And I think as countries and nations and citizens of the world, like you are and I am, prepare for rising global tensions and the economic impacts of what could take place with Iran. All right, friends. That's what I wanted to share with you. Thank you so much for watching. If anybody wants to, let me go through the comments 1 second to see what I find. Kevin says hello. Okay, let's go through some other things. So the irony is that the B-2 Spirit bomber planes which strike didn't penetrate the core facilities underneath. Yeah, yeah. A lot of people argue that this was just something that Trump had to do because it was a way of calming down Netanyahu, and maybe, yeah, this didn't accomplish what they wanted to accomplish. Um, okay, let's go here. Over which countries did these planes fly over? Um, the only one that I've seen is India. But again, that could be an incorrect map. I just saw maps in a presentation from the Pentagon, and you just see a line, and you see that the southern cone of India, there seems to be a trajectory there. Other than that, they flew through the Atlantic, through the Mediterranean, and straight through Israel into Iran. So that was the flight path. And on the way out, as I said, into the Indian Ocean, and then that little tip of India. Um, but that could be an incorrect map. I mean, if it's an incorrect map, it's really bad. It looks bad. Um, yeah, Belladonna says even if those sites are destroyed, Iran would build another in a few years. That's the most important thing. That there seems to be no radiation, so the material was uh, not touched, not damaged. Some people even say that they could replace the IR1 for IR6, some of the newer ones, if at any point they were damaged. But the most important thing is that that material has not been damaged. Some people say that it was actually moved preemptively. They knew that this was coming, so it was moved, but it's uncertain. That's all speculation at the moment. The one thing that we do know is no radiation. That's 100% confirmed. So that leads us to believe that either it was not there or it was not impacted. No, it was not damaged. And with other countries offering to accelerate the acquisition of nuclear weapons, then it's a moot point. They could have it anytime they need it. Um, okay, here talking about Africa. South Africa is the only country in the world that gave up their atomic bomb. Yeah, a lot of countries um, de-escalated. I also read a post by Arnaud who was talking about a place near Chongqing here in China called 816. 816, if you guys don't know, it used to be nuclear weapons underground, really underground, that was cooled by a river, and it was underground weapons area, huge, something like 20 football fields. But because when China signed a non-proliferation agreement, they closed that one down. 816 has been closed down. It was a huge secret, and in fact, it has been opened as tourist destination now, so people can go and see what they had there and what the what the secrets that they had. Um, so that tells you the trust that countries have had in this non-proliferation agreement. And we're talking here about Iran trying to develop their own nuclear weapons when we all know, and it's a known fact, that Israel has nuclear weapons, and they do not accept um, what do you call checks or visits by international agencies that regulate this. They do not accept the visits. It's absolutely secret. But America is 100% worried and concerned with what Iran might be doing. Again, the hypocrisy is so big that the only explanation is manipulation. And when I say manipulation is the Israelis have something. The Israelis have something on a lot of people that allows the Zionists to be tweaked and turned into puppets. And they do what they know is not good for them, but they are forced to unless if they do that, if they don't do it, then they'll be exposed. There's something there because none of these things make sense. How could you go after Iran when Israel has a nuclear program that is absolutely secret? No inspectors have ever checked. And now the inspectors are actually saying, oh, because these sites were attacked, we need to go and check if there's any damage in Iran. Are you crazy? Do you think that Iran is going to allow you to go in and send a damage report from their site? Sometimes people are a little bit stupid. Okay, let's see what other comments are here. Yeah, definitely don't forget Libya and don't forget Gaddafi. More and more countries are going to be out there seeking the protection that nuclear weapons give them, and the world has just been made a more dangerous place, all thanks to the United States. All right, friends, I see there's no more questions. And yeah, I think we're almost closing to 53 minutes. Thank you so much, guys, for coming and watching and talking to me and listening to me. Leave your comments, share, subscribe to Media Without Means if you haven't subscribed yet. Um, it's a channel that so far is now being flagged, so it gets a bit more views than my regular channel because you know what it is. YouTube doesn't like my channel too much. So, guys, that's it for today. Thank you so very much. Stay tuned, and well, until I see you again, take it easy, and bye for now, guys.